All right, so welcome back to this fifth conference, the second day, fifth conference on the Inklings. So now we're going to start with this next session, this roundtable with panel, with three speakers coming from different universities. Well, two from the University of the Basque Country, one from the University of Seville, right? So first, we're going to have Maddi Susperregui coming from the University of the Basque Country. Well, she's a colleague of mine, and well, she holds the master's degree on comparative literature, and she's currently working on her PhD about the comparison between the symbology of the mountains and subterranean spaces in the work of Tolkien and in Norse mythology. She has also taken part in several international congresses in Lisbon, in Germany, etc. And now she's going to talk to us about well, the otherness in the Silmarillion and in some characters of the Norse Eddas. So whenever you're ready, Maddi.
Okay, thank you very much, Idor, for this introduction, and thank you for coming here today. As Idor has already mentioned, today I will be talking about the otherness. In order to do so, I will define first what actually this otherness means. And once I've explained that, the term, I'm going to show you a study that I did about some characters that I find quite similar from the Silmarillion and from Norse legends and the Eddas and myths and so on. Then, after this comparison between these characters, I will try to explain where I see this otherness, as you will see that it is in a way portrayed as in this dichotomy of good versus evil as the evil part of the stories, okay? And then I will finally conclude my presentation by showing you whether this otherness is something positive or negative. Okay, so let's start with the term. We can't talk about the otherness without talking about the idea of identity. Identities are kind of product of social, cultural, gender, many other approaches. And it represents how majority and minority groups are built within a society. It was actually George Herbert Mead who, in his Mind, Self, and Society, wrote, "Identities are created through our ongoing social interaction with other people and our subsequent self-reflection about who we think we are according to these social exchanges." That means we influence people and people influence us because we are in constant touch with one another. And it is this connection actually what helps us create our own identity as individuals. However, the otherness is not just what makes us different from the rest, but more about what others think, these others who actually categorize us or a group as such, as the other, right? So let's start with this study of these characters, who I think that have similar characteristics among them, and that are actually part of, or that makes them part of this, the other, right? So the first pair is that of Morgoth and Loki. Okay, what do we know about Morgoth? Well, first of all, starting from his bare name, we know that Morgoth means he who arises in might, so we already know he's quite a powerful character. But it also means black foe of the world. So we already have this kind of negative connotation just by knowing his name. He's the main enemy in this story, right? The idea of power in this story, I mean, in Tolkien's works, generally, characters could choose whether to use this power to do good or to do evil. And of course, in the case of Morgoth, he decides to be the most evil creature. He's presented as a very greedy character because he knows that the Silmarils, which are the most valuable jewels in this story, will make him become the most powerful creature. That's why he steals them. And apart from that, he goes against nature. He destroys it with Ungoliant, his companion, during a period of time, and I will talk about her later. He is a shapeshifter. He takes the shape of many different creatures during the story. And of course, he creates an army which is created by monsters and disgusting creatures. They are all quite ugly in this beautiful versus ugly dichotomy as well. So that's why there's another characteristic that actually makes them be part of the other, apart from being evil. And he lives in quite unpleasant places like Utumno and Angband, which are like strongholds, very dark and cold places, like not pleasant at all. In the case of Loki, for example, what we know about him is that he's described as the slanderer of the gods, the source of deceit, and the disgrace of all gods and men. So once again, we have this negative connotation just by the description of the character. The first lines that you read about Loki are just these ones. However, he's described to be physically attractive or beautiful to look at, which makes him a bit different from the rest. However, his nature is evil and undependable. Although he's not 100% evil, that's what makes him quite special. However, he's cunning and treacherous, and he is, of course, the father of the 3 most known monsters in the Norse world, which I will explain them later. And he's another shapeshifter. He takes the shape of many different animals, like a mare, like a fish, a fly, many different shapes, in order to, fulfill his deeds. And a fun fact about him is that even though he's the main creator of the problems of the gods, he's the one who usually fixes them as well. So he's like in the middle of good, evil, okay, I get you into trouble, but then I am the responsible one for helping you fix this problem. And I will tell you a short legend about him. And he's the one in which, after the war between the 2 main groups of gods in Norse mythology, which are the Aesir and the Vanir, a wall was broken and it needed to be rebuilt. The thing is that the gods wanted that wall to be rebuilt in a very short period of time. And one day, a strange horseman appeared riding his huge and strong horse, and he offered himself, okay, let me do it. Let me rebuild this wall. And but in exchange, I will take the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya for me. Of course, the gods did not want to lose. But Loki said, okay, don't worry. It's impossible for him to do that in that short period of time. So let's do that, okay? And the gods accepted that. The thing is that they saw that actually this horseman was fulfilling his promise, was doing it in this period of time. So the gods were afraid and told Loki, okay, now you have to fix this problem. You have to help us. So, as I've mentioned before, Loki is a shapeshifter. And he saw that this horseman did not have that power without his horse. So he took the shape of a mare. And he was like, in a way, seduced, this horse. And therefore, this horseman could not achieve his promise. And the gods won, of course. Later on, they saw that this horseman was actually a giant, which are the main enemies of the gods. But this is another topic. So, let's continue with the next pair of characters. The first one is Ungoliant. Ungoliant is a huge dark spider who was descended from the darkness. She swallows the darkness of the world. She's an interesting character because we could say that she has this kind of double otherness. First of all, because she's a monster, she's in the evil side, but she's also a female character, female and independent character who at first is corrupted by Morgoth. She goes and kills nature with him. But finally, she decides to be mistress of her own lust. She chooses to be her own ruler. However, she does not follow the pattern of beauty either. She's quite an unpleasant animal, maybe, because she's a spider. And she goes against nature, as I've told you. In the case of Hel, she's the queen, the Norse queen of the underworld. She's one of these three monstrous children that I told you before. She's Loki's daughter. She's also, she has this double otherness as well, for the same reason as Ungoliant, because she's a monster-like, or she's on the evil side, but she's a female character as well. As you can appreciate, she does not follow the patterns of beauty either, because she's half dead, half alive. And she's the clearest representation of death, as she rules this underworld. She lives in El Yudnir, which actually means sprayed with snowstorms. So she's also related not also with death, but also with coldness. And she's, of course, gloomy and cruel. And at the end of the world, when Ragnarok arrives, she has with her all these souls, all these of the people who actually died because of illness or old age or even betrayal, but not all who were worth to go to Valhalla, for example. So the evil ones are on her side. Okay, let's move on to this third pair of characters. First of all, we have Soren. Soren, which is translated as the abhorred. So once again, we have this negativity in the translation of this name. He's a fallen Maya, and he's the successor of Morgoth, because he follows the steps of Morgoth, these steps of ambition. Morgoth stole the Silmarils, and Soren created the One Ring to rule them all. That means that he wanted to become the most powerful character here, and that's why he created it. He's therefore extremely power-hungry. He's the second Dark Lord, and he's also a shapeshifter. He takes the shape of a wolf in the Silmarillion, and he takes the shape of an eye in the Lord of the Rings, of course. He lives in Mordor, which is a fire-related place, which we could, in a way, relate with this Christian idea of hell, and in Angband, which is another dark stronghold in the Silmarillion. In the case of the giants, or the Jotuns, as they are called, they are the main enemies of the gods in Norse mythology. Although the whole Norse world was created from Ymir's body. Ymir was a giant, and there we have a quotation in which we can see this. From his blood they made the sea and the lakes. The earth was fashioned from the flesh, and mountain cliffs from the bones. But however, they are one of the clearest examples of otherness in Norse mythology, because as I've told you before, the otherness is not just what makes you different from the rest, but it is also when someone else makes you be part of that group. And the gods were the ones who wanted to live separated from them, and they built a wall in order to not get in touch with them. Then we have the Balrogs. They are definitely amongst the most dangerous creatures in Morgoth's army. They are fire demons, and they live. Well, of course, they are huge and strong, and they live in the deep holes of Angband, which is this stronghold I told you before. And they are the responsible ones for when there's the moment in which Ungoliant is the spider that I told you before about, and when she decides to go take her own way, the other ones threaten her, and that's what says the Silmarillion, with their whips of flame smote asunder the webs of Ungoliant. So they are like very good defenders of Morgoth. In the case of Norse mythology, we have the image of Surtur, which is another fire demon, strong and monster-like appearance once again. He's an untamed beast, of course, and lives in Muspelheim, which is the fire realm in Norse world. When Ragnarok arrives, he's the first one entering to Bifrost, which is the bridge that goes from Midgard, which is the realm of men, with Asgard, which is the realm of the gods. And he burns the whole world. And it says, Surd comes first, riding with fires burning both before and behind him. So he's the destroyer of everything. And once again, we have this fire-related creature. Fire meaning destruction, death, and chaos, of course. Then we have the case of the dragons. First of all, we have Glorung. When Morgoth cannot defeat the Noldor anymore, he decides to attack with another strong and powerful creatures, which are the dragons. And it is Glorung, the one who appears during the Dagor Bragola, which is a very important battle in the Silmarillion, which is called the Battle of Saturn Flame. So once again, we have this fire-related war. And what it is interesting about this character is that, well, we know about his power because of this quotation that you have there. It was Bane to go against Glorung with all their force, for only by cunning and good fortune could they defeat him. And, well, he could have killed Turin Turambar in many ways, but he killed him because of his poisonous blood, which is something that I found similar with Jormungand in the case of Norse mythology. He's another of these three monstrous children that I've mentioned. He's the second son of Loki. And he has the shape of a huge serpent. When these three children were born, the gods knew that they were going to just bring trouble to the Norse world. So they decided to send them to different places. Hel was sent to Helheim, and Jormungand was sent to the deep sea. And then we have the quotation. He, Odin, threw the serpent into the deep sea that surrounds all lands. But the serpent grew so large that now, out in the middle of the ocean, it lies cold around all lands, biting its tail. So it's extremely huge, and it's surrounding the whole world. And he's the one who killed Thor at Ragnarok, once again, because of his poisonous blood, like Glorung did with Turin Turambar. And the last but not least pair that I've brought you is the one formed by Karkaroth, I don't know how to pronounce his name actually, and Fenrir. The first one is also known as the Red Maw, and it appears after the defeat of Draglun, which is another huge and powerful wolf. No one could defeat Huan, which is the wolf, the guardian wolf that Beron and Luthien have. And in that very moment, Morgoth decides to, attack with this Karkaroth, this wolf. And he feeds himself with, it is Morgoth, the one who feeds Karkaroth. And when it is similar to Fenrir, which is the other wolf that I will be talking about, he bites off Beron's hand and he swallows it. Although this wolf would become extremely, then after that he will suffer in pain and so on. But we know about him that he's a really strong and powerful character as well. And that's what where we see that is through this quotation, which says, "The fire and anguish of hell entered into him, and he became filled with a devouring spirit, tormented, terrible, and strong." In the case of Fenrir, he's Loki's third monstrous child. And, well, the gods said, when these three were born, said, misfortune and evil were to be expected from these children. That's why they were sent to different places. In the case of Fenrir, he was sent to Asgard, where the gods would control him and they will chain hhm. The thing is that none of the gods was brave enough to feed him because of his strength, and except Tyr, the god of war in Norse mythology. However, one day Tyr was betrayed by Fenrir because he actually bit his hand and he swallowed it. At this very moment, he broke the chains and Ragnarok started. So he's responsible for the beginning of the last battle. And he was the killer of the mightiest god in Norse mythology, who is Odin. So in all these cases, where do we see otherness? I think that otherness can be perceived in many different aspects, but the most important one, or the first that I saw, is that they are part of evil in this good versus evil dichotomy. They are all corrupted, and that's why they are on evil side. And I would like to mention that otherness is not just being evil, but in this case, in the cases that I've been talking about, is actually where I see this otherness. I also, as I told you before, see some double otherness in some of the characters, like in the case of Helen or Ungoliant. Most of them don't follow the patterns of beauty either, except we have the case of Loki, because he's described as an attractive character. So they go against the norm, or where it is socially accepted as socially acceptable. However, not all of them are 100% evil, because there we have Loki, who is still considered the other because of many other reasons. However, he's physically attractive. He helps the gods, even though he gets them into trouble. He's sometimes described as a funny character. He's a trickster, and indeed, he's worshipped by many of Asatru, who are actually the ones who believe in Norse mythology as a lifestyle in their everyday life. So, as a conclusion, is it something positive or something negative, that of being part of the other? I mean, in this case, I would say that it is depicted as something negative, because being the other, or at least what I've tried to explain, is that the other in this case is being part of evilness. However, it also, being the other also means being different, and this is not something negative at all. It can give you or offer you independence, as in the case of Ungoliant, Hel, and Morgoth, for example, who are the own rulers. And then we have, of course, the case of Loki, who is the example of the beloved other. So it could also be something not that negative. And well, that was all. Thank you very much for your attention.